Every time I start a video, a train goes past my place where I record. Nevertheless, I want to discuss very quickly, what are they? What are elite performers? I've got a load of picture of them above, and obviously there's some of the people I've chosen here. And by the way, in a previous video, depending on which ones you've watched, I mentioned something that was kind of interesting about these. I've met most of these people on these pictures, and I forgot to say it in my other video. But what are elite performers? What do we actually mean by that? Well, the first thing we'd say about them is they are the top of the performance pyramid. Okay, the performance pyramid. Now, I'm not going to teach the performance pyramid here because potentially it's a whole lesson by itself. But the performance pyramid is structured like this. It is a triangle, probably nothing too surprising based on what I just said there. And at the bottom of it, we would have some notion of kind of grassroots or participation. The next bit here, we have literally the idea of participation, people maybe going to a club, maybe doing some kind of sport. Here we have some performance, I'll just put perform there, and at the top we have this kind of elite sport, and that's what I'm talking about. But one of the things I want you to notice, and we'll come back to this conversation in a second, is to have this elite at the top of a pyramid, you need the underneath to feed it. Okay, so you need people doing sport for all in schools and PE. You need community clubs. You need participation. But when we're talking about the top of the performance pyramid, that's what we mean, the very top echelons of our system. Furthermore, they would be considered an example of excellence. So elite performers have developed excellence. No surprise there. They are very frequently national or, let's say, international. We could even be saying Paralympic, Olympic. But this is the level that they're competing at, probably. In many cases, not all, they will be professional. Let's consider professional for the purposes of this description, at least, to be paid. People who are paid. There's something slightly different about professionalism. We'll touch on in other tutorials. But crucially, and of course it's because this is a small group, we are talking about the minority of people. Most people never achieve this level, which I suppose is one of the reasons why it's so aspired towards. Now, in order to achieve more of this, one could argue you've got to adopt an elitist policy. Now, elitist policy sounds horrible, doesn't it? We're only going to look after this group of people. What we mean is, by an elitist policy, is that we are going to put more resources to here than we are to here. Okay, that's what we mean by an elitist policy. More resources to the top of the performance pyramid than to the bottom of it or the middle. So, what if we take an elitist policy? What if we take this notion? There's our elitist policy, and we are funding elite performance, but we're not sort of bothering as much with participation and grassroots, and if people participate, fine, but if they don't, no problem. Well, what are the benefits to that? What would be good about a system, a sporting system like that? Well, here's some examples. First one, weirdly, is lots of success at the top of the pyramid could itself encourage participation. I wonder how many people, maybe paying attention to this video, has been inspired by an elite performer. I think the idea might be quite good. It also gives an encouragement of human potential. One of the things with like elite performance and pushing the envelope and being the best is it makes other people realize it's possible, right? It also creates role models, people for others to aspire to and to follow. If we fund elitist policy, that is going to be the case. We also get a much better chance, let's call it, of medal success. If you fund the top of the system, medals are more likely to come. Let's talk about Team GB and the Olympics. So you guys are probably too young to remember that a few years ago, a couple of decades ago, Team GB was a laughingstock internationally in international sport because we had no kind of centralized elitist structure, and that's changed quite a bit. We could go into English Institute of Sport, we could go into sport, UK Sport England, national lottery funding, but the point is, if we fund, we get a better chance of success, we get more models. Now that can lead to notions of national pride, you know, this idea of patriotism and feeling, let's say, British or whatever it happens to be. Also, it could lead to a shop window effect. Now, if you're not sure what that is, a really sort of healthy, sporting, successful nation can attract foreign investment because it's perceived internationally that's the case. We might also get better facilities. You know, if we fund the top of the pyramid, we have to fund with facilities, for example, English Institutes of Sports, for example. We might be talking about the National Water Sports Centre in Nottingham. I was there recently. We also get employment opportunities. People have to coach, they have to train, they have to medicate, they have to physio, and so on and so on. So we get employment ops. People can work in that sphere. And of course, that creates like a cycle of excellence, doesn't it, really? We also and this one's an interesting one, we get a confirmation, oh God, I hate this, of political superiority. They make me write this stuff down. What we mean by this is that British, let's say, kind of foreign policy can be legitimized by this sort of notion that Britain's a successful country, say. And also, perhaps a positive or a benefit is we get social control. People are appeased, they're happier. There's a very famous Latin saying called pan-a-circenses, which is bread and circuses. The circus kind of entertains the masses. I won't get too gladiator on you on that one. But of course, there are also lots of drawbacks to this policy, to this elitist policy. What are those drawbacks? Not as many, but let's go over, or limitations, let's say. Okay, so we might get under investment. And of course, what are we going to get under investment in? Well, it's going to be those classic things, grassroots, GR, minority sports, things that aren't as kind of noticeable, I suppose. They're going to get less investment potentially. Let's be brutally honest, this is exclusive. It means that only some very small numbers of people get support, those that are very, very good. There's no guarantee of success. What if we do all this elitism and then someone else does it better? Some other country does even better, and then we don't get that success as a result. Also, to go and out compete the rest of the world, it's expensive. This is not just throwing a few quid at it. You've got to do it well. Other nations do the same. Okay, so it's not any kind of guarantee, as we've said, that you just sort of invest and it all happens for you. And the other point is it needs to be ongoing. This is not something that can be done just for a year or two or pre-2012 Olympics. It has to be done ongoing again and again and again. Now, this is a fairly chunky video, so I'm going to keep going in this situation. And what I want to do here is I want to look at provision. Okay, provision for excellence. Let's have a think about this. What is required for excellence to be achieved? Well, classic things, funding, cash, wonga. It needs to be paid for. We need, let's call them WC facilities. Now, that does not mean the toilet, although I think it probably could. I mean world-class facilities in there. We are talking about WC coaches. World-class coaches are required for that system. We also need WC, world-class competition. So we need the best of the best to be brought to the shores to achieve it. We also need science, we need research, we need biomechanics, we need that kind of science supports medicine, biomechanics, rehabilitation, nutrition, psychology. But we can also consider, well, how do we go about doing it? What does this actually look like? And with that in mind, folks, I want to talk about pathways to excellence. It's all well and good saying, well, pay for it, make it happen. What are the actual pathways to getting this thing done? How do we go about doing that? Well, here's one. We can develop specialist schools. Now, this is not common in the UK, actually, but think about when the last time that you heard about a school specialising in swimming or volleyball. But that is a model that lots and lots of countries actually follow. We did previously have the sports college system in this country, but that's sort of not quite fallen down, but largely speaking. You need clubs, and those clubs need to be community-based. You need clubs in communities to allow people to progress from grassroots up to excellent standards. You need academies. These are absolutely classic in the modern era, whether that be football or rugby or golf or whatever it happens to be. You also need selection procedures. Okay, selection procedures. And when we're talking about selection procedures, folks, we are talking really about, if I just move this on a bit more, talent ID, spotting talent. How do we actually go about doing that? Well, one of the ways we do it is we've got what's called a world-class program, a WC program. This is a funding program in 2 phases that allows sort of high-level performers to be supported. We've also got what's called the UK Sport Strategic Plan. UK Sport Strategic Plan. And this strategic plan, what this done, written by UK Sport, that's an organisation, by the way, what that does is it aims to develop representation from a wider range of sites, so more people. There's other examples. We've got the Athlete Development Framework and Rider Pathway for Cycling in New Zealand. We've got the Elite Athlete Development Grant Programme in the USA, providing money to where it's needed. But other ways that people can get to excellence is through college or university. Now, I tend to think about like an American system when I write this down, but universities are a source of, what we might call high performance, sort of varsity, high level competition, pre-professional. We could be talking here about scholarships, people who are funded and perhaps their university tuition is supported so that people can get to where they need to be, to the specialist facilities and train. We could be talking about NGBs, national governing bodies supporting athletes, and we could be talking about regional and national squads. Think about in your area, it's quite likely that there's some kind of county team that leads into some kind of national team that allows, again, talent to be identified and to be brought through. Okay, folks, that's everything I want to mention in this video. Bit of a long one, but hopefully useful.